Lyra moved through the forest on all fours, her pale hair tangled with leaves and dirt, her bare feet whispering over the frozen ground. The scent of deer guided her as surely as it did the 40 wolves sprinting beside her, their breath curling into white mist beneath the cold moonlight. She was hunting wild free, alive. She wasn't human anymore. She was pack. She was home. The world she'd been born into a decade ago had faded into fragments, cold memories of pain and abandonment that sometimes clawed at her dreams. Where are you watching from now? She thought, somewhere deep inside. I hope you never learn what it feels like to be thrown away by the ones meant to protect you. Ahead, the massive white wolf led the hunt. He was twice the size of any normal wolf, majestic, terrifying, and sacred. Lyra followed close behind him as she had since she was 8 years old when he'd found her dying in these woods. That first night he'd carried her in his jaws, gently, as though she were made of glass, and the pack had accepted his decision without question. Whatever he was, his power demanded obedience. Lyra no longer spoke the language of men. She growled, whined, and moved with the fluid grace of a creature born from instinct. She hunted with teeth and nails. She slept in a den beneath an ancient oak wrapped in warmth and fur. This was her life. This was enough. The white wolf's howl split the silence, a sharp command to spread. Lyra veered left, crouching low, her storm-gray eyes narrowing on movement ahead. There, a young buck, strong but untested. The pack encircled the prey in practiced rhythm. Lyra's task was to drive it toward the stronger wolves. She lunged from cover, her cry something between a roar and a scream, too raw to be human. The deer bolted straight into the white wolf's path. The kill was swift. The feast began by order of rank. The white wolf first, then the dominant males, then the females, and lastly Lyra. She hadn't flinched at the taste of blood for years. It was food. It was survival. Afterward, they rested in a clearing, glazed with frost. Lyra lay against the white wolf's side, her fingers buried in his thick fur, listening to his heartbeat. Warm, steady, safe. He was the only constant she had ever known since that awful night her father had left her to die in the cold. She pressed closer, and a deep rumble of contentment vibrated through him. If she still remembered how to wonder, she might have asked why this wolf was larger than the rest, why he seemed to understand her in ways no beast should, why his eyes sometimes looked too aware, too human. But she'd forgotten how to ask such questions. Then came the sound that shattered the night, human voices. Lyra froze. The white wolf surged to his feet, a growl rolling from his chest like thunder. The pack scattered, forming a wall around her. 5 men crashed through the trees, wearing heavy gear and dragging strange metal cages on wheels. Ropes, nets, tools for capturing. There she is, one of them shouted. The feral girl. She's real. Lyra couldn't understand the words, but she knew the tone. They wanted her, to take her away. She bared her teeth, crouched low, ready to strike. The white wolf stepped in front of her, massive and unyielding. 40 wolves closed ranks, a living barricade of fangs and muscle. Those are real wolves, one of the men stammered. They'll tear us apart. We've got tranquilizer darts, another snapped. The girl's worth it. Scholars in the capital will pay a fortune for a human raised by wolves. Fear rippled through Lyra, an old feral terror. They would cage her, rip her from her pack. She had been abandoned once. She would not be taken again. Something primal burst open inside her. Power she didn't know she possessed tore through her chest and out into the world. Her throat stretched with a sound that wasn't language. It was older roar. Help. It wasn't a word. It was a command. The air itself trembled as her cry ripped through the forest, echoing through every ridge and hollow. Then the woods moved. Wolves, dozens, then hundreds emerged from the shadows. From neighboring packs, from far-off hunting grounds, from dens buried deep beneath snow. The howling circle had answered her call. In seconds, the clearing overflowed with snarling bodies and flashing teeth. The 5 men went pale. "This isn't natural," one screamed. "Run!" They fled, stumbling over their own equipment as the sea of wolves surged after them, driving them out far from Lyra, far from their forest. The wolves chased the men until the last human scent faded beyond the trees. Only when the forest fell silent again did Lyra collapse, her strength draining away with the echo of her power. Her limbs trembled, vision blurring. She had poured something ancient out of herself. Something she didn't understand. The white wolf was beside her in an instant, his massive frame pressing close to hold her upright. Lyra buried her face in his thick fur, trembling at what she had done. She had called them, commanded them, all of them. How then before her eyes the impossible happened. His body began to shift beneath her hands. Fur melted into skin bones, twisting muscles reforming. Lyra staggered backward in horror as the creature she had trusted became something else, someone else. Where the wolf had stood now towered a man, tall, broad-shouldered, battle-scarred, his hair white as snow and falling past his shoulders. His eyes were a piercing glacial blue, hauntingly familiar. "Lyra," he said, his voice deep and steady, carrying a warmth that cut through the cold. "Those men were going to take you. I couldn't protect you as a wolf, not against their weapons." Lyra stared, breath ragged. The white wolf was human? Her mind spun. She tried to run, but her legs gave out after only a few steps. He caught her easily, holding her as if she were fragile glass. "Easy," he murmured. "You're safe, I promise." She fought against him, half snarl, half sob, caught between terror and betrayal. "I'm Darius," he said quietly, still holding her, but never tightening his grip. "I've protected you for 10 years. That hasn't changed." Lyra thrashed harder, animal fear overtaking reason. "Liar, betrayer, not pack." "I couldn't reveal myself before." Darius continued, calm but resolute. "It's forbidden by ancient law, but those men forced my hand. I won't let anyone take you." Over his shoulder, Lyra saw the pack watching from the shadows. None of them looked surprised. They had known. All of them except her. The realization crushed her. The betrayal burned through her chest and she went limp in Darius's arms, not in surrender, but in exhaustion and shock. Darkness swallowed her whole. When she woke, she was moving. Strong arms carried her effortlessly, and even in her haze, she recognized the scent, his scent. The wolf's scent, even now in human form. She kept her eyes closed, listening. Footsteps, many of them. Voices murmuring around her, not wolves, but people walking upright. "How is she, a woman?" asked her tone laced with worry. "Unconscious but stable." Darius replied, his voice low. "Her power manifested fully," he added. "She called every wolf within 5 miles. A wild speaker." Another woman said in awe, "I thought they were just a myth." "She's real," Darius answered, his voice firm. "And she's my mate." A stunned silence followed. Then someone, Rhea the Beta, spoke softly. "Your Majesty, she's feral. She can barely speak. She's lived as a wolf for a decade. How can you?" "She's my mate," Darius repeated, his tone like iron. "Celine chose her for me. I felt the bond the moment she turned 18. I've been waiting for the right time to reveal myself. The hunters forced it sooner. They would have caged her." He continued, his voice darkening. "Studied her like an animal. I couldn't let that happen." The name Rhea sparked a faint echo in Lyra's fading consciousness. Strong female familiar. "What will you do with her?" Rhea asked quietly. "Teach her," Darius said. "Help her remember what it means to be human. Give her a choice." His arms tightened protectively around Lyra. "She deserves to know both worlds before she decides which one she belongs to." Lyra's eyes fluttered open. The first thing she saw was Darius's blue gaze locked on hers. "You're awake," he said softly. relief flickering in his voice. Good. We're almost home. Lyra blinked, realizing they were moving through a forest unlike her own, darker, denser. Around them marched more than 20 warriors, disciplined and silent, guarding their alpha king and his feral mate. She struggled, weakly trying to break free. "If I put you down, will you try to run?" Darius asked. Lyra bared her teeth, defiant. "That's what I thought," he murmured. "Lyra, listen to me. You can't go back to the wild right now." Darius said, his tone firm but quiet. "Those hunters know where you are. They'll return with more men, more weapons. You're not safe there anymore." Lyra didn't want to understand his words, but something in her instincts told her he was right. The meaning reached her, even if the words themselves blurred like fog. "I'm taking you to my territory," Darius continued. "You'll be protected there, and when the danger's gone, if you still want to go back to the forest, I'll take you myself." His voice softened on the last words, almost a promise carved into air. Lyra stopped fighting. Not because she trusted him, she didn't, but because her strength had drained away completely. The power she'd unleashed had left her trembling and hollow. They emerged from the woods into a place that tugged faintly at her memories. A settlement rose of timber and stone buildings, dirt paths lit by lanterns, and wolves everywhere. But these wolves wore clothes, walked upright, and stared at her with eyes full of curiosity and recognition. Lyra shrank against Darius's chest, trying to make herself smaller to disappear. Too many. Too bright. Too wrong. "She's terrified," Rhea murmured beside them. "I know," Darius replied gently. "We'll take her somewhere quiet. No crowds." He glanced at an older woman waiting nearby. "Maeve is the healing room, ready." "Yes, Your Majesty." The woman answered, her voice calm and warm. "Everything's prepared." They entered a tall structure and moved through echoing corridors that all smelled of smoke and herbs. At last, they reached a chamber washed in firelight. The air was warm. Soft furs blanketed the floor. Darius lowered Lyra carefully onto the furs. Instantly, she crawled into the farthest corner, pressing herself against the wall like a frightened animal. "I'll leave her in your care, Maeve," Darius said, "but I'll be right outside if she needs me." The healer nodded and approached slowly, her movements deliberate and non-threatening. "Hello, little one," she said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to make sure you're all right." Lyra's silver-gray eyes followed her every move. Her body was tense, ready to strike or run. Maeve stopped several feet away, then sat down cross-legged on the floor. "You've been with wolves for a long time, haven't you? Forgotten what people are like? That's okay. We'll take it slow." She reached into her bag and tossed a small piece of dried meat toward Lyra. Instinctively, Lyra caught it mid-air and swallowed it whole. Good Maeve smiled gently. "You're hungry. The king told me you used a lot of power today. That takes energy." Over the next hour, Maeve worked patiently, earning Lyra's fragile trust through quiet kindness and food. From a distance, she asked the girl to bare her teeth, to lift her arms, to stretch and move. When Maeve tried to approach and check the scars along Lyra's ribs, Lyra hissed sharply. "All right," Maeve said quickly, backing off. "No touching, not yet." "I understand." She left food and water within reach and stepped out, leaving Lyra alone for the first time since the attack. Lyra ate mechanically, her mind spiraling. The white wolf, her protector, had been a man all along. A king. A liar. Her pack had known and kept it from her. Her blood held power she didn't comprehend, and now she was trapped among walls and humans that smelled wrong. She curled into herself, arms wrapped tight around her knees, a low, broken sound escaping her throat, something between a growl and a sob. The door creaked open. Darius entered, still in his human form. Lyra's body tensed. Her first instinct was to snarl, but he didn't move toward her. Instead, he sat down across the room, giving her space. "I know you don't trust me right now," he said quietly, You feel betrayed, and maybe you should, but you need to understand out there, I couldn't reveal myself. It's forbidden by laws older than either of us. Every king of my bloodline must live part of each year as a true wolf to remember what we are, beneath the crown. His voice was the same voice she'd followed for years, the same cadence that had meant safety in the dark. Lyra tried not to listen, but her body remembered even when her mind resisted. I found you when you were 8, Darius continued softly. Someone left you to die. You were crying, terrified, so small. I should have taken you to the nearest pack, but I couldn't. Something in me knew I was meant to protect you, so I carried you to my den instead, and you became pack. Lyra's eyes burned with tears she'd forgotten how to shed. I watched you grow. Darius went on, his voice roughened by memory. Watched you forget human words and learn the language of the wild. Watched you become fierce, unbreakable. He paused, his eyes meeting hers. And 2 months ago, on your 18th birthday, I felt the bond snap into place, the bond of a mate chosen by Celine herself. You're my mate, Lyra, Darius said quietly, his deep voice steady but tender. Chosen by Celine herself. I've been trying to find a way to tell you, but there was never a right moment. Mate. The word struck something ancient in her. Even in her wild feral mind, she understood it pairs that bonded for life wolves who belonged to one another. She had believed the white wolf was her mate, her protector, her chosen one, and he was. Just not in the form she had imagined. Her thoughts tangled painfully as she tried to reconcile the truth. You don't have to decide anything right now, Darius continued, his voice low, careful. You don't have to accept the bond or me, or any of this. But please let me keep you safe. Let me help you remember what you've forgotten. When you're ready, truly ready, you'll choose for yourself wild or civilized, wolf or human. With me, or without me, the choice is yours. He rose slowly, giving her room to react. When she didn't lash out, he turned toward the door. I'll have food brought 3 times a day. Maeve will check on you, and if you need me for anything, just call. He paused, his eyes softening. I'll hear you. Then he left, closing the door quietly behind him. Lyra was alone again with her fear, her confusion, and that strange, unbearable ache in her chest that whispered the bond was real. The first few days were brutal. She refused to wear clothes, refused to sleep in the bed, refused to speak. Whenever possible, she shifted into her wolf form, clinging to the only identity she understood. Only exhaustion forced her back into her human skin. Maeve visited every day, patient and calm. She brought food, never pushed, never demanded. Bit by bit, Lyra stopped growling when the older woman entered. Each evening, Darius would come. He'd sit across the room far enough not to threaten her and talk softly about the pack, about his day, about things that didn't matter, but somehow filled the silence. He never reached for her, never asked for anything in return. He was simply there. On the 5th day, Lyra shifted to human form and didn't change back. Wrapped in furs, she sat in the corner, watching him with guarded eyes. You stayed human, Darius said gently. That's progress. Lyra made a low sound, half growl, half attempt at speech. Are you trying to talk? He asked, leaning forward just a little. It's all right if the words don't come yet. They will. Her throat worked painfully. Why? Lie, she rasped, her voice rough and broken from disuse. Darius met her gaze. I didn't lie. I just couldn't tell you the truth. There's a difference. Lyra glared at him, eyes burning. I know it doesn't feel that way, he said softly. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry you found out like this. I'm sorry I couldn't prepare you. But I'm not sorry for protecting you all those years. And I'm not sorry that Celine chose you to be my mate. Don't want mate, Lyra forced out. That's your choice, he replied without hesitation. You can reject me, reject the bond, and I'll honor that. But it will still exist. You'll feel it, so will I. Weeks passed and her human side began to surface from beneath a decade of wild instinct. It was harder than anyone expected. Words came back in pieces, disjointed sounds with fading meaning. Maeve helped her patiently, holding up objects and naming them. Spoon, she said, lifting the utensil. Poon, Lyra echoed, frowning. When Maeve showed her how to use it, Lyra stared blankly, then dipped her fingers into the soup and ate that way instead. Maeve chuckled softly. We'll try again tomorrow. Clothing became the next battle. Lyra tolerated a thin tunic because of the cold, but anything heavier made her feel trapped. Boots lasted minutes before she tore them off, preferring her calloused, bare feet. Dresses were worse. She ripped at them until she was free. She needs freedom, Rhea said one afternoon, as Lyra shredded another garment. She's been running on 4 legs for 10 years. Tight clothes feel like chains. So they compromised loose tunics and pants, no shoes unless necessary, her wild white hair left untamed. But the hardest part wasn't clothing. It was the silence of the room. The chamber Darius had given her was warm, soft, safe by any human measure, but it felt wrong. Too still. Too separate. She would wake in the dark, panic rising as she reached for the warmth of a pack that wasn't there. On the 3rd night, her cries broke through the bond between them. Darius came immediately. He didn't ask. He didn't speak. He simply shifted fur and muscle, replacing flesh, and lay beside her, his massive wolf form curling protectively around her trembling body. Lyra pressed into his warmth, her face buried in his fur, and for the first time since leaving the forest, she slept. Lyra pressed her face into his fur, and for the first time in years, truly slept. After that night, Darius stayed with her, sometimes as a wolf, sometimes as a man, but always close enough for her to feel his warmth. The bond between them deepened quietly, even as Lyra battled the confusion and resistance that came with it. Rhea became an unexpected ally. Fierce, composed, and loyal, she never treated Lyra like a fragile creature or a curiosity. Instead, she spoke to her as an equal. One afternoon in the gardens, Lyra sat cross-legged in the grass, trying to recall the name of a small yellow flower. "You're not lesser because you lived wild," Rhea said, her tone gentle but firm. "You're different. You survived what most of us couldn't. That takes strength." "Miss Pack," Lyra murmured haltingly. "Miss Den. Miss Hunting." "Then hunt," Rhea said simply. "Shift. Run. No one's stopping you," Darius said. "Danger. Hunters." Rhea's eyes flashed. "The hunters have been handled. They won't touch you again. We found their camp and made it clear that anyone who tries to capture you will answer to the Alpha King himself. You're free to go into the forest whenever you wish, Lyra. You're not a prisoner." That changed everything. From then on, Lyra spent her days in the forest running as a wolf, her paws sinking into moss and leaves. She hunted, rested beneath trees, and returned to Moonvale Keep only when the sky burned orange with dusk. Freedom healed something raw inside her, but her new challenge was her gift. The power of the wild speaker had saved her from Garen's hunters, but she couldn't control it. Sometimes strong emotions summoned wolves unintentionally. Other times, when she tried to call them, nothing happened. Maeve understood the problem immediately. "Your gift's bound to your emotions," she explained. "You need conscious control. Let's train." They began practicing in a clearing beyond the settlement. Maeve instructed her to summon specific wolves, not out of desperation, but with focus. "Think of what you need," she said, "not just help. Call the scouts when you need eyes, the hunters when you need strength. Your gift isn't just instinct, it's communication." It took weeks, but Lyra learned to temper her calls, shaping them with intent. Soon she realized she could send not just commands, but messages, warnings, directions, even questions that the wolves somehow understood. They answered in thought and feeling, in a language older than words. This is extraordinary, Maeve said one afternoon, watching as Lyra coordinated 3 separate packs to hunt without conflict. Even in the old times, wild speakers were rare, and most could only summon. You can command, organize, share strategy. That's unheard of. Lyra shrugged. Feels normal. Like talking. Maeve smiled. Because to you, it is talking. You spent 10 years speaking this way. It's more natural to you than human words. Her progress with speech came unexpectedly. One morning, while watching warriors spar in the training yard, a young fighter named Jace fell hard and didn't rise. Without thinking, Lyra rushed to him. Hurt, she said, pressing her palms to his leg. Broken. Here. Her voice was clear, instinctive. She pointed exactly where the bone had fractured, though no one could see the damage yet. Rhea knelt beside her, stunned. How did you know? Lyra hesitated. Can feel. Body tells me. Wrong. There. They carried Jace to Maeve, who confirmed the fracture was precisely where Lyra had said, and only then did everyone realize Lyra had spoken in full sentences without hesitation. The words come easier when you're not thinking, Maeve told her later. When your mind focuses on something else, your memory wakes up. From that day forward, their lessons changed. Instead of repeating phrases, Maeve put her in real situations, helping in the healing chambers where she described symptoms, assisting hunters, where she had to give directions, telling stories to the pack children who constantly demanded more. Her speech grew rapidly. Her words were simple, sharp, and direct, but they carried meaning. One afternoon, when someone suggested simplifying a lesson for her, Lyra frowned. Not stupid, she said firmly. Just forgot words, not forgot thinking. Rhea smirked. I know. Anyone who thinks otherwise is a fool. You've been running pack hunts since you were 8. That's not simple, that's survival. That kind of strength takes brains too. 3 months after arriving at Moonvale Keep, Lyra faced her first real test of belonging. A delegation had come from a neighboring territory, wolves from another pack there, to discuss trade and borders. Among them, though Lyra didn't know it yet, was her father. Cain looked older than she remembered. His hair was streaked with gray, now his face carved by years of ambition and guilt. He had clawed his way up the ranks and now stood as alpha of his own small pack. When his gaze first passed over the young woman, standing beside Darius, he didn't recognize her. The frightened child he had abandoned in the woods a decade ago was gone. But when Darius introduced her as Luna Lyra, his mate, the blood drained from Cain's face. Lyra. His voice cracked. That's impossible. She died. We left her in the forest 10 years ago. She couldn't have survived. The hall fell silent. Every wolf in attendance turned toward him with looks ranging from disbelief to disgust. Lyra stared at the man who had once been her father. Memory returned in flashes, his face in the moonlight, the sound of his boots crunching leaves as he walked away. Her small voice calling after him until it broke. You left me, she said evenly, her voice cold as frost. Left me to die. I was 8. Cain's expression collapsed. We had no choice, he said weakly. The pack wouldn't accept an Omega child. My mate, your stepmother, insisted. I had to choose between you and my position. I chose survival. You chose wrong. Darius said, his voice sharp as a blade. You abandoned a child, your own blood, to die alone. A child who was pack, who deserved protection. She survived, Cain stammered. She's here now, isn't she? It all worked out. Rhea's voice cut through the room like steel. She survived because wolves showed her mercy when her father didn't. Wild animals were better parents than you ever were. Lyra took a step forward. She was smaller than Cain, but she radiated an authority that made even alphas look twice. Survived, she said. Learned. Grew strong. Found real pack. Real family. She turned slightly toward Darius. Rhea and the wolves of Moonvale keep her family now. They chose me. You threw me away. Not the same. Lyra. Please, Cain whispered, reaching out as if he could erase 10 years with a gesture. I'm sorry. I've regretted it every day. If I could take it back, you can't. Her voice was flat. It's done. You're not pack, not family, nothing. She turned her back on him, the ultimate rejection in wolf culture. In that single motion, she stripped him of all claim to her. Darius moved to her side, his hand brushing hers. The negotiations are over, Alpha Cain, he said coldly. You and your delegation will leave my territory immediately. And you will spread word that Luna Lyra stands under my protection. Anyone who threatens her, touches her, or even speaks her name with disrespect, answers to me. Cain opened his mouth, but the warning in Darius's eyes silenced him. He nodded stiffly and left his delegation trailing behind. When they were gone, Lyra sagged slightly against Darius. Thought I'd feel something, she murmured. But there's just nothing. He stopped being your family the day he left you, Darius said softly. Real family doesn't abandon its own. Lyra nodded slowly. No, your real family. Pack. Rhea stepped forward and placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder. You did good, she said with quiet pride. That took strength. Not hard, Lyra replied, her expression steady. He's weak. Chose fear over his cub. Rhea's eyes softened. Wolves don't do that. Even wild ones. And it was true. In all her years with the Howling Circle, Lyra had never seen a wolf abandon its young. They would die to protect their cubs. Cain's choice had made him less than the creatures he'd left his daughter to die among. After that day, something inside Lyra changed. She stopped fearing her human side. Being human didn't mean being fragile like him, it meant having the power to choose. Darius was human and strong. Rhea was human and fearless. Maeve was human and wise. Being human, she realized, didn't make her weak. It made her free. Lyra had begun to realize something she'd never known before. She liked having choices. She sometimes wore dresses, now simple ones, she could still move and fight in. She'd learned to braid her hair, though most days she still preferred it loose and wild, like wind-blown silver. She'd even mastered the spoon mostly, but when no one was looking, she still used her hands. More importantly, she'd started connecting with the pack beyond Darius, Rhea, and Maeve. She sat in on council meetings, quiet at first. But every so often she spoke, and when she did, her sharp, instinct-driven insights left even seasoned warriors impressed. She trained the younger wolves in hunting and tracking. She worked in the healing halls beside Maeve, her uncanny intuition for injuries proving invaluable. Gradually the whispers about the feral girl faded. Now when people saw her, they saw the Luna Darius's mate, a woman who carried both wilderness and wisdom in her bones. But the wild never left her. Lyra still vanished into the forest each day, still hunted under moonlight, still felt more at peace beneath open skies than within walls. Darius never tried to change that. Instead, he often joined her, sometimes as a man, sometimes as the great white wolf who had first saved her. One night, as they lay beneath an ancient oak with starlight spilling through its branches, Lyra whispered, "You don't have to do this. You're a king. You should sleep in the hall, not here in the dirt." Darius chuckled softly, his voice a low rumble against the night. "I'm also a wolf, and right now I'm exactly where I want to be. The hall can wait." It was then she truly understood what the mate bond meant. It wasn't about one bending to fit the other. It was about meeting halfway, two souls bringing their own wild truths together and finding balance in between. Despite her resistance, she found herself drawn closer to him every day. Darius understood her in ways no one else ever could. He'd lived in both worlds just as she had. He could run beside her through the forest or sit beside her in silence. He never mocked her halting words, never made her feel lesser for learning slow. 3 months after the attack, Lyra found herself in his chambers late one evening. She'd come to ask something, she couldn't even remember what, but stopped when she saw him, standing by the tall window, bathed in moonlight. "Can't sleep?" he asked, not turning around. "No," she said quietly. Her words came easier now, even if her sentences still stayed short. "You too much thinking," he admitted, glancing at her. Then with a faint smile, "Come here. I want to show you something." Lyra stepped closer, cautious but curious. Darius pointed through the window to a dark patch of forest beyond the cliffs. "See that ridge," he said. "That's where I found you. 10 years ago, tonight." She looked toward the trees, her breath catching. She'd been so small that night, so cold, so sure she was going to die. "You were crying," Darius said softly, "calling for your father. But he didn't come." His gaze met hers. "So I did." "Why?" she whispered. "Why save me?" He hesitated. "I don't know. Instinct maybe. Or fate. But I'm glad I did." Lyra turned to face him fully. In the moonlight, he looked less like a king and more like the wolf who had carried her to safety. The same eyes. The same quiet strength. "I'm sorry," she said haltingly, "for being angry. You saved me. Protected me. I forgot that." "You had every right to be angry," Darius replied gently. "I kept a truth from you. Even if I had no choice, that doesn't erase the pain." She took a slow step toward him, then another, until she was close enough to feel the warmth radiating from him. Carefully, she pressed her palm to his chest, right over his heart, the same place where she'd once rested her head against his fur. The same steady heartbeat, the same warmth, the same safety. "Still you," she murmured. "Wolf or man, still you." His hand rose to cover hers. "Always," he said softly. "I'll always be both wolf and man, wild and civilized. And if you'll have me, I'll always be yours." Lyra looked up at him, the face she had come to trust. The soul she had known long before she understood words. The mate bond hummed between them no longer. Something she fought, but something she finally embraced. "Mate," she whispered. "Mine." Darius's smile broke like dawn. "Yours if you'll be mine. Yes." The word was clear, steady and sure. Yes. When he kissed her, it wasn't just passion, it was recognition. Home. The missing piece of herself sliding perfectly into place. She was both wild and human, both wolf and woman. And now she was his. Their mating ceremony was held beneath the full moon, both packs gathered beneath the silver light. Lyra wore white furs instead of a gown, a bridge between the two worlds that had shaped her. A Luna born of wilderness and love. Lyra's white hair fell freely down her back, wild and untamed even after years among civilization. When Darius marked her beneath the full moon, sealing their bond, the forest erupted in sound howls from over 100 wolves, echoing across the night. Not just his pack, but the wild wolves of the Howling Circle had come answering Lyra's call to witness their Luna's union. Their presence was the greatest gift she could have imagined. 6 years later, Lyra stood at the edge of the forest watching her 3 children play in the soft snow. Her eldest Astra, 5 years old, with her mother's silver-white hair and her father's fierce, commanding gaze, was showing her younger brother Ronan, age 3, how to track paw prints in the mud. Baby Alara, only 6 months old, slept peacefully against Lyra's chest in a sling made from soft wolf fur. Though she was Luna now, Lyra had never truly left the wilderness. She still preferred to run on 4 legs through the trees, still hunted beneath moonlight, and still slept better beneath open skies than in the great hall of Moonvale Keep. She had learned balance, to walk gracefully between both worlds, to lead as Luna when duty called, and to roam as a wild creature when her spirit demanded. A familiar white wolf emerged from the trees, a fresh kill in his jaws. Even after all these years, Darius kept the tradition of his bloodline, spending part of each year living wild. Lyra and the children often joined him, teaching Astra and Ronan That strength came from embracing both sides of who they were. Lyra shifted into wolf form and greeted her mate with a soft nuzzle. Little Ilara barely stirred in her sling, already accustomed to her parents' transformations. Mama Astra shouted, her tiny hands pointing at the ground. I found tracks, big ones. Lyra shifted back, crouching beside her daughter. Show me, she said gently. Astra proudly pointed at the paw print in the dirt. I think it's Uncle Nash from the Northern Patrol. Good eyes, Lyra said with a smile. You're learning well. Darius shifted into his human form, setting down the deer he'd carried. Our daughter will make a fine tracker, he said, pride warming his voice. She has your instincts and your stubbornness, Lyra teased. Ronan came bounding over, his gray eyes bright. Papa, can we hunt together? Please. After we eat, Darius promised, ruffling his son's hair. They ate as a family, some of the meat roasted for the children, some raw for Lyra and Darius, who still preferred it that way. It was a perfect union of both worlds, wild and civilized instinct and ritual. Later, when the children were playing nearby under Ria's watchful eye, Darius pulled Lyra aside. Do you ever regret it, he asked quietly, choosing this life, staying with me? Lyra looked at him, the wolf who had once carried a dying child from the dark and had become her king. No, she said simply. I have both worlds now, wild and home, pack and family, wolf and human. You gave me choice. She smiled faintly. And I chose you. Darius's hand rose to her cheek, his thumb brushing her skin. And I choose you again, in every life, every world. He kissed her forehead, the touch soft but reverent. Years later, when young shifters came to Luna Lyra for guidance, torn between their animal instincts and human hearts, she would lead them into the forest herself. There she would shift and run beside them, until their confusion bled into the wind. When they were tired, she would sit with them, beneath the trees, speaking not in dominance, but in quiet certainty. You're not half of one thing, she would tell them. You're whole, both wolf and human, both wild and civilized. Celine didn't make you choose, she made you complete. Then she would share her story, the abandonment, the years of surviving as a feral child, forgetting speech, sleeping in dens, learning again what it meant to be human. She told them how a white wolf, a king, had found her, and shown her that strength was not about rejecting one side, but embracing both. Some will tell you to choose, she would say, her eyes glowing softly in the moonlight. To be only civilized or only wild. But that's a lie. You can be both. You should be both. That's what makes us shifters, what makes us more. She gestured toward the clearing where her children ran through the trees, half in sunlight, half in shadow. My daughter is a princess and a hunter. My sons are princes and packmates. They don't have to choose, and neither do you. Her voice always softened then. Celine made us whole. Wild hearts, human minds, instinct and wisdom. Don't let anyone tell you to be less than everything you are. And those who came to her would leave lighter, their spirits settled. They understood now that their conflict wasn't weakness, it was strength. It was wholeness. It was what they were born to be. Lyra never stopped being both. She was Luna of Moonvale Keep and as a proud daughter of the Howling Circle. She spoke at council tables and hunted beneath the stars. She wore furs at ceremonies and ran naked through moonlight. She raised her children to honor both the wilderness and the wisdom of their kind. And every night, when she curled up beside Darius, whether in human arms or beneath the warmth of a wolf's coat, she was home. Completely, fiercely, wildly home.